Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Astotara Sadashi Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Astotara Sadashi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माया यमुना माया की तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की संकीर्तन यज्ञ की सामवेद भक्त वृंद की Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyat Shrinvata Swagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridiyantasto Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 19, King Prithu's 100 Horse Sacrifices, Text 13. Atrina Kodita Hantum Prithuputra Maharata Anvadhavata Sankrudaha Tishta Iti Cha Abravit Atrina Kodito Hantum Prituputro Maharata Anvatavata Sankrudas Tishte Chabravit Atrina Kodito Hantum Prituputro Maharata Anvadhavata Sankrudas Tishteti Chabravit Atrina Kodito Hantum Prituputro Maharata Anvadhavata Sankrudas Tishteti Chabravit. Atrina Chodito Hantum Prituputro Maharata Anvatavata Sankrudas Tishteti Chabravit. Atrina Kodito Hantum Prituputro Maharata Anvatavata Sankrudas Tishteti Chabravit. (13) Chapter 19, Text 13. Atrina kodito hantum Prito putro Maharata Anvatavata Sankrudas Tishta tishteti cha bravit Atrina chodito hantum Prito putro Maharata Anvatavata Sankrudas Tishta tishteti cha bravit Atrina, by the great sage Atri. Chodita, being encouraged. Hantum, to kill. Prituputra, the son of King Prithu. Maharata, a great hero. Anvadhavata, followed. Sankrudaha, being very angry. Tishta tishta, just wait, just wait. Iti, thus. Cha, also. Abravit, he said. Translation. When the son of King Prithu was informed by Atri of King Indra's trick, he immediately became very angry and followed Indra to kill him, calling, "Wait, wait." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The words Tishta Tishta are used by a Kshatriya when he challenges his enemy. When fighting, a Kshatriya cannot flee from the battlefield. However, when a Kshatriya, out of cowardice, flees from the battlefield, showing his back to his enemy, he is challenged with the words Tishta Tishta. A real Kshatriya does not kill his enemy from behind, nor does a real Kshatriya turn his back on the battlefield. According to Kshatriya principle and spirit, one either attains victory or dies on the battlefield. Although King Indra was very exalted, being the king of heaven, he became degraded due to his stealing the horse intended for sacrifice. Therefore, he fled without observing the Kshatriya principles, and the son of Prithu had to challenge him with the words Tishta Tishta. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. When the son of King Prithu was informed by Atri of King Indra's trick, he immediately became very angry and followed Indra to kill him, calling, "Wait, wait." Hare Krishna. Thank you for this opportunity to say something on this verse. Before I speak, as always, I ask the blessings of all the Vaishnavas that I may say something that is both pleasing and beneficial to your spiritual life. So, Atri Rishi has noticed what Indra is doing, and he has informed the son of Prithu Maharaj about what is happening. And he is encouraging, Purijan Prabhu says this in his overview of this chapter, that Atri Muni is encouraging the son of Prithu to kill Indra. He wants him to kill him because of his misconduct. He's encouraging him, and we see that the son of Prithu is chasing him, and he's saying, wait, but he won't kill him from behind. He wants Indra to, face him because he's a Kshatriya. And we see that in this age, there is such integrity for the Kshatriyas. They have such a high moral code. They hold themselves in a very high regard, according to rules and regulations of their varna, and ashram, like that. And he is described in this verse as very angry. He is extremely angry. He's not just irritated or annoyed. He's very angry at what's happening, but he has such control over his anger that he will wait for his enemy to turn around and face him before he strikes. Such is his integrity. And Prabhupada is speaking in the purport about the nature of a Kshatriya, that he cannot flee from the battlefield, and he must stay. Either he wins or he dies trying. Basically, that is it for a Kshatriya. And a real Kshatriya will not turn his back, this and that, like so on and so forth. So the duty is so ingrained, the integrity is so ingrained, the control is there. And we read in the Mahabharata at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when the warriors are fighting, they fight amongst equals. A chariot, a warrior on a chariot will only fight with another warrior on a chariot. A foot soldier will fight with a foot soldier. They will fight only amongst equals, not like in today's day and age when we look at war. What does war mean? That you attack the woman, you attack the children, the helpless. You bomb the hospitals, the refugee camps. You destroy the aid that is coming. That is, in this day and age, that is war. It's actually, but that is not war. That is cowardice. And how elevated this age was, where they even Kshatriyas had these mystic weapons, and even their weapons, they have a weapon. It could penetrate the womb of a pregnant woman to kill the fetus, but it would not kill the mother. Such advanced technology, but it is so different in today's day and age. And we see, talking about the Bhagavad Gita and the war and this aspect of duty, Prabhupada is talking about the nature, the duty of a Kshatriya. I was speaking last week at a Namahata, and I was also speaking about this point, that, when we see Arjuna's example from the Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning, as he says, I'm confused about my duty, because he's being pulled in two different directions, So he asks Krishna, you tell me what I should do. I don't know what my duty is in this situation. So us as living entities, as spirit souls, we have two duties. You could say one is, swadharma, or the worldly duty, and the other is sanatan dharma, or the eternal duty, And basically what Krishna advises us in the Bhagavad Gita is that we must do both our duties in a very balanced way, but we must always have determination and enthusiasm in all of our duties. Not that we renounce one for the other and just, abandon all responsibility. We must do both. And when Srila Prabhupada speaks about dharma, he obviously gives in different places different meanings, different explanations, different examples. But one example or definition that he gives is that, dharma is our defining nature, our innate defining nature. what makes us who we are, what makes me, me, what makes you, you, in that sense. And our defining nature is that we are a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, And in this life that we are currently living, one of many millions, we have many different identities in this life. I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a employee, I'm a temple devotee, I'm, so many identities, and we all have so many identities. But Chaitanya Charan Prabhu speaks about this, and he says that is defined as a functional identity. It's the way you function in the world, in that terms, But underlying this is your fundamental identity, which is the spirit soul. And, we shouldn't then reject our functional identity. You don't reject the fact that you're a daughter, a sibling, a employer, a friend. You don't reject all of this, But it is subordinate to your fundamental nature, which is that you are a spirit soul who is part and parcel of Krishna. That is the foundation of everything. And in this world, we have to harmonize these two, because I am a spirit soul, so ultimately I must live at the level of a spirit soul, not live at the level of my other temporary identities, which will change in my next life, When Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was speaking on this, he gave this one example of when Srila Prabhupada took his American disciples back to India for the first time. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When Srila Prabhupada took his Western disciples back to India for the first time, and he wanted to have pandal programs in all the cities that he was in. So they were in Mumbai, obviously, the very famous Cross Maidan pandal. So he was telling his disciples that he wants to have this pandal and they should organize it. So initially they, it was their first time in India, so they told Prabhupada, we don't really know how things work here, how to organize, how to deal with these people, we're foreigners. We don't really understand. We're struggling, to arrange this for you. And Prabhupada looked at them and he said, the whole world considers America so great, What's the use of your being American if you can't do something great for Krishna? And they were so confused, the poor disciples, they were saying, the whole time Prabhupada is telling us, we're not the body, you're not American, you're not Indian, you're not European, you're not this. Now he's saying, what's the use of you being American if you can't use it? But yes, basically that whatever your functional identity is, whatever identity you have, use it in Krishna service in some way. But let your fundamental nature define you. The fact that you are part and parcel of Krishna. That should be your defining factor. Yes, I have a role to play in the world. I have many roles to play in the world. But ultimately, I should harmonize them all with what Krishna's plan is or what Krishna's desire is, We have to focus and remember what is the ultimate goal of why I am here. But we are conditioned when we live in this material world. So we see that, this verse this chapter or this section of the Bhagavatam, we're reading about Indra and his degrading behavior, That one thing we should take from this as well is that even though the post of Indra is so exalted, he's a demigod, he's the leader of all the demigods, the king of heaven, all of these things, but this post is also material. Navayogendra Swami gives this example where he says, once there was a sage and he was in the forest, and there was a line of ants walking past him. So he was just very intently observing these ants, just so intensely studying them. And someone was seeing this, and they asked him, what are you doing? Why are you studying these ants so intensely? And the sage said that, every single one of these ants was Indra at some point in their existence. But now they're ants, So even the post of Indra isn't permanent. Even though, we when we read the scripture, we know that, time is very different in the heavenly planets. One day there's 6 months here, something like that. It's very different. But even then, it will come to an end at some point, But the nature of this world, especially in this age of Kali Yuga, is such that when someone does something nice, we don't really like it. We feel very threatened and challenged by that, And even Indra, as exalted as he is not free from this kind of thought, of conditioning, of action, So if Indra is not free from it, what to speak of us, The only thing that will bring us some solace and some good fortune is spiritual prosperity. And that is what the Shastra is reminding us, that the only purpose of life, the only dharma that we have is spiritual advancement in that way, Indra is not going to be Indra forever. And that's a hard thing for him to swallow, He's going to have to give up that post at some point. And it's the same with us. I'm not going to be Gaura Bhumi forever and ever and ever. At some point my life will come to an end and I'll take on another identity, But what is eternal is the position of being a devotee. That is something that doesn't end, And this is the thing that we should focus on. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, please declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. The position of a devotee will never end. It will always be there. And in fact, we will take greater and greater pleasure and joy in it, There is no limit to the happiness, the bliss you can experience on this platform. But another lesson that this part of the Bhagavatam shares with us is that, those individuals who are in positions of power, sometimes even they are not pure. Especially we can see in Kali Yuga, there's ample examples everywhere. People in positions of leadership are not pure. They do have material desires. Many material desires, Just because someone is a leader, or in this case, a spiritual leader, just because you're a spiritual leader, it doesn't actually mean that you have pure consciousness. There can be some attraction for some material position, for something material in that sense. And we read in the previous verses how King Indra, he makes a show of being a spiritualist. He puts on the guise of a sannyasi, of a spiritual leader. And he comes, and what does he do in that guise? He steals the sacrificial horse, He degrades the garb of a wise man in that way, But Prabhupada said, that even a grihasta, a householder, can be on the level of a sannyasi if he follows the religious principles accordingly. That, on one sense we should look beyond the externals. It is your internal practice of spirituality that counts more. That someone who has a family can be more advanced than a sannyasi because of how he practices in this way. So we should always be mindful of this, in some way. But ultimately, as Prabhupada says, purity is the force. Purity is the thing that drives us. It is our intention in spiritual life that will shine through in our practice, Don't make a show of being a devotee, of being attached to Krishna, of being renounced, all of these things. Because for those people who put on this kind of facade, you can't keep it up forever. At some point you will slip up, you'll get tired, you'll get lax, you'll get lazy, you'll slip up, and then the truth will come out in some way, And if you come to any spiritual path, if you come to Krishna consciousness looking for something other than Krishna, if you look for power, if you look for position, if you look for something else, you won't maintain that for very long. Because that's not what this path is about. You won't maintain that, what you're looking for. And yes, we know all of this. We read the scriptures. We understand the philosophy theoretically, but still, we have so many expectations of the material world. I can even just speak for myself, Read the Bhagavatam all the time. I know theoretically what I'm supposed to do, but still. So many dreams, so many hopes, so many desires. So many things I want from the material energy, and I'll still try. We don't stop trying, but what happens? We're just dissatisfied. Always dissatisfied in some way. And this is the way Indra lives. Indra lives in constant fear of someone taking his position. What a way to live. Just looking over your shoulder all the time. Looking down, that guy, he's doing some tapasya. What does he actually want from that? Does he want my position? No, okay. And he does that. We read the whole Bhagavatam. He's always getting into trouble because of this, Indra. He's always in fear that someone wants his position. So he constantly just disturbs everyone's tapasya. The sage is meditating there, he sends, a beautiful apsara to break that meditation so it doesn't advance, He's always living in this constant anxiety. That's actually no different from us, We're always living in constant anxiety, And in one sense, Indra is fulfilling so many of his desires. He's the king of heaven, he's got so much of opulence, he's so elevated, But is he really happy? I don't think so. If he lives in constant anxiety in this way, And that's the similar case with us, We're fulfilling, on one sense, many of our desires. We're advancing in life in so many ways, but are we really happy with all of this, We're squeezing as much joy, as much pleasure out of the material energy as in our experiences as we possibly can. But, in one sense, maybe that's the root of our fear, because we also live in constant anxiety, constant fear, And Burjan Prabhu says this, that as soon as we see ourselves as separate from Krishna, fear takes root in the heart in this way, that, because we feel that will I not be able to live my life the way I planned, enjoy the things that I've worked so hard for? Is something going to happen that's going to cut my time short? So Indra is constantly living in this fear that, is Prithu, does he want to be more famous than me? Does he want to have more piety than me, a higher position than me? He's, all of this anxiety. And we see, because this chapter touches on envy, how envy is the sum total of our material experience. When we take all the lust, all the anger, all the pride, all the greed we have, and we put it all together, the only thing that comes out of it is envy. Basically. That is the sum total of material experience, envy, And, the one point I wanted to make about envy is that, in Christianity, I think they say that the first sin is pride. I think, if I'm stand to be corrected, but I think according to them, they have the 7 deadly sins and stuff. So the first one is pride, the first sin, and that's true, when pride is basically, as they explain it in a very simple way, when you feel that you're entitled to something more. So you aspire for higher and higher things because you feel that you deserve it. You're entitled to it. But, there's something a little more dangerous than that. And that touches on what envy is, But what it actually is ingratitude. When we don't have gratitude, that is one thing that grows envy in a very, very fast way. Why? Because, basically, we're turning our eyes away from all the good that we have. Indra has so much of opulence, but in this moment he can't see any of that. He has so much of abundance, but what is happening to Indra? He is being pulled down into this mentality of scarcity. That actually, no, I don't have what Prithu has, and I want that, He's ignoring what he has, but he's focusing on what's apparently missing in his life, And some part of Christianity, they share this belief that, we commit sin from a position or a perceived position of lack, which makes sense in some ways, that, I falsely believe that, if I get this and I get that and I get that, all these other things, then and only then will I be happy. So I'm going to commit this sin because I don't have. So I want it. So I'm just going to do what I must to take, And we can see this in our own lives, that we, in some ways, we're ungrateful for what Krishna has allotted us as our due in life. In this life, this is what I am due, but I'm not grateful for that, for what Krishna has given to me. So I am drawn into this mentality of scarcity. That actually, no, I can't see the abundance that Krishna has bestowed upon me. All I see is what I don't have, the scarcity. I don't have this, I don't have that. And I'm upset with Krishna. I'm displeased with Krishna, So I'm going to take what I deserve. And that is one form of envy, And when I was reading the purport, there was a point that stuck out in my head, but I can't remember now. But basically, we go through life with this mentality, and we're so caught up in the mind that it's so hard to, then start to distinguish what is right, what is wrong, what is appropriate, what is not. Especially in Kali Yuga, as Kali Yuga progresses, the lines are blurring. You can't even have a disagreement with someone in this day and age, without it turning into something very horrible, the cancel culture, you can't, you're seen as being, so disrespectful in certain ways. But, and then, you get dragged down to this and you think, well, what am I supposed to do, in this kind of situation? But we know, as Prabhupada says, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is there. It is the scripture that roots out the principles of adharma, of irreligion, And the Srimad Bhagavatam will ultimately tell us what the absolute truth is. So if any point we are confused about anything, we turn to the Srimad Bhagavatam. We know in the first canto, first chapter, second verse, the first line, Dharma projito kaitavota. And basically the translation of that verse is that this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, And how does it do that? By completely rejecting any religious activity which is materially motivated. if we want to make any advancement in life, spiritually, we cannot work from a place of material motivation. That's not going to serve us in any way. But this highest truth that the Bhagavatam shares with us can only be understood by the devotees who are pure in heart. That's a long, tall order to ask in certain cases, When will I be pure in heart is another question, But the Bhagavatam basically in this verse says that, the highest truth is reality which is distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all, And it is this truth which will uproot the threefold miseries which are situated in our heart. This anxiety that we're feeling from all corners, from outside, from inside, from all of this. This truth of the Bhagavatam will uproot all of that, And yes, the Bhagavatam tells us what is the dharma of humanity, of the human beings, in the second chapter of the first canto, that the supreme dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Supreme Lord. That is our dharma as spirit souls, as human beings, to act in a way to attain loving devotional service. Because ultimately, as I was saying earlier, our fundamental nature is spirit soul. We are part and parcel of Krishna. So we will only be completely satisfied in relation to Him, because we are part of Him. Minute part, but yes, we are part. But, still, we struggle with this because of our conditioning. Prabhupada says in a morning class that he gave in Los Angeles, he says, that this is material existence. We only think, how will I be happy? How will I be happy? No one thinks, how will Krishna be happy? No one thinks like that. How will Krishna be happy? And Prabhupada explains further that a name or a quality of Krishna is asamordhva. Asamordhva means no one is greater. No one is greater than Krishna. So Prabhupada is saying basically, when it comes to God, there's no competition. It's not like, how you have, Miss Universe, Miss World, Miss this, Miss that, there's competition for who is this. There's no competition for who will be God. Krishna has no competition. It's just Krishna, And that, when we look at, the position of a servant gets everything from the master. He's provided anything and everything he wants. All he has to do is one thing, and that's just serve. And by that one thing, everything is provided for him. He just has one duty. But Prabhupada says further that still, we are so conditioned, we are so covered that, someone will say, this is my hand, I'll punch you with my hand. It's my hand, But actually, if Krishna withdraws his energy from your hand, you're paralyzed. What you going to do with a paralyzed hand? You can't move it, Then you don't say, oh, this is my hand, It's very nice that you're saying it's your hand, but when it's paralyzed, it's still your hand, but you have no power anymore. So in this way, there is no competition when it comes to Krishna, And we Prabhupada always says Krishna consciousness is for the non-envious. But Prabhupada says, there's a way that you can test if you are free from envy and jealousy. And he gives the test is Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 2nd chapter, text 42. He says that verse, that is the test to see if you are non-envious. And basically that verse says that devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So if you want to test, Prabhupada says, if you're non-envious, you should ask yourself that in your, shelter of Krishna, have you become detached? Have you grown in your devotion, and have you had a direct experience of the Supreme Lord? If you are truly non-envious, you will have these three things. If not, then you have some work to do. That's the test. But in that purport to this verse, there was a very nice part which I wanted to share. And the purport says that in this verse, there's a Sanskrit word used, virakti. So the word virakti is very significant in this verse. The word virakti means detachment, whereas tyaga means renunciation. So we can ask ourselves, what's the difference between detachment and renunciation? Because that's something, especially when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we want to renounce everything, cut off everything from our old life, our material life. But why specifically the word detachment is used and not renunciation? And the purport says that according to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the word renunciation can be used in a situation in which one considers giving up an enjoyable object. But by considering everything to be potential paraphernalia in the service of Lord Krishna, as described in the previous verse, one need not give thought to renunciation, for one uses everything in the proper way in the service of the Lord. And that is, the sentiment of Mahaprabhu in the Shikshastikam, that, I don't desire any of these things. I actually just want to be your servant. But that is the principle of what's known as Yukta Vairagya, that we engage everything in Krishna's service. That it's fine if I have all of this wealth, all of this abundance. The only way I'm going to use it is for you anyway, Krishna, because it comes from you. It's your mercy that I have this. It's not that, I have this big bank balance, I need to just get rid of it because it's a burden on my head. No. Whatever you give me, Krishna, I will use in your service. So there's no question of renouncing anything. Rather, whatever you give me, I will use for you. Because Prabhupada says in this class that, coming just back to the scarcity mentality, that in Krishna consciousness there is no scarcity. In true Krishna consciousness, there is only abundance, because Krishna provides everything. I will stop here. Any corrections? Comments? Yes.
Hi, Krishna.
Thanks.
So you spoke about like how Prabhupada said material existence means how will I be happy, but no one thinks how will Krishna be happy. And like my Guru Maharaj, he also talks about how we still use spiritual life, in a way for ourselves. We're using spiritual life so that we can, be happy, so that we can be better, and so we're still even using devotional service for ourselves. Exactly like that point you're making. So how to kind of get out of that mentality then?
It's hard, because it's something that we've done for countless lifetimes. That's actually why we're here. They say envy is what caused our fall down, that I want to be separate from you. How to get out of that mentality of using spiritual life for ourselves. I don't know if this helps, but we have, and the thing is sometimes we do it very unconsciously. It's just that's the way we function, and we've always functioned like that. But you know, I don't know why I want to say be kind. You know, just when we actually, even with amongst each other, how many times do we actually, with other devotees, sit down and listen to them? You know, I want to say that in some situations we're very selfish with our time. We're very focused on what we need to do for ourselves. And when we start focusing on what other people need, in a sense, what other devotees need and how we can help them, that extension of self softens your heart in some way. And the thing is, you know, this is a psychological thing, but it's also, we do this thing in psychology, certain practitioners, where you have to start challenging your irrational beliefs and thoughts, you know. It takes some time, but every time this kind of thought comes up, we have to challenge it. So sometimes, you know, we're not going to be successful the first 10, 20 times, but we keep catching ourselves. Wait a second. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is it because it keeps me comfortable, it keeps me safe, or is it because, you know, through the devotees, Krishna has been asking me to do this many times, you know? And also to cultivate some kind of surrender for Krishna. That, okay, this is happening, I won't fight with you today. I'll accept it, you know. I'll accept what you're saying today, Krishna. There is a reason that you want me to experience this, and I don't know what that reason is, but I trust you. Part of being selfish in spiritual life, I feel, is also because we don't trust Krishna with our life. We don't trust the plan he has for us. So in some way, we have to get to know Krishna as our best friend and trust him, even if we don't know what the end result will be. I don't know if someone else has an answer to Madhurya's question. How to come out of this mentality as a devotee. Or if someone has another comment. Okay. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.